I caught a car on fire.
I remember that.
I was scared I was going to get fired.
Most people get in trouble when they try to hide or make up things or lie or whatever.
Because I probably should have been terminated. So you had some entrepreneur kind of inside of you always, in a way.
You can always tell how a business is doing by what the customers are saying.
So in a way, you kind of sold your company twice in a way. Which time was more painful?
People really get in trouble when they accept subpar performance.
Kyle, I did what you told me to, and I got fired. True story. Welcome back to the greatest blue-collar podcast in the world. I have a special guest for you guys today, somebody who has been a great influence on my life and has I've learned a lot from him, and he's done a lot of things for me over the years, partially because I worked for his company that he started. I've been there for about 16 years now, so I want to introduce you guys to Mr. Steve Schaefer.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast, Steve.
Thanks, Kyle. Yeah.
So I want to get into some of the history of how you built your company over the years. However, first I want to bring up a story that I don't know if you'll remember or not, but a lesson you taught me about 15 years ago. I think it's important because it's a lesson a lot of people could learn from, for sure.
Okay.
So about 15 years ago, I was 22 years old. I had worked for your company for about 6 months at this point, and I caught a car on fire.
I remember that.
You do remember this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It was a Audi.
Yeah.
I had about 2 years of experience at this point, so I was still pretty green.
Yeah.
I was young. I was welding inner structure into this Audi, and I did have every welding blanket in the shop. I did have everything covered.
Yeah.
Somehow something got past it, and it caught some carpet insulation on fire, and it melted the wiring harness of the car as well.
Yeah.
So I felt horrible, and it ended up being, I think it was this was spring of 2009, I believe.
Okay.
And I think it was about a $6,000 mistake I made.
Sure.
At that time, and I felt horrible. I remember I was telling Scott, the manager at the time, that I was offering to pay for it. I felt horrible, and so I fixed it. I spent the whole week putting this full wiring harness. It ended up being there was no connectors. It was a full car harness. It went to every ABS sensor and everything. It was horrible to do. I spent a week doing it, putting that in the carpet. I had to pull the dash, everything else. After it was all said and done, I don't think I talked to you during that whole time period, but afterwards you stopped by and you talked to me, and I think I apologized again probably for it or something. But you told me, you said, Kyle, don't worry about it. You went about it the right way. You owned your mistake. You corrected it. You fixed it, and you moved on. Don't stress. You basically told me don't stress about it anymore. It's over with. You said that you've made even bigger mistakes over your years and everything else, and I still think about that all the time. It changed. I'm not gonna lie. At the moment when it first happened, I was scared. I had been there 6 months. I'm 22 years old. Yeah. I made a big mistake. I knew it was a big mistake, and I was scared. I just put a contract on my first house. I was like, I'm gonna get fired. I was scared I was gonna get fired, but I had to fess up to it, knowing the mistake. Yeah. And needless to say, if I would have tried to hide it, we probably wouldn't be sitting here right now, rightfully so, because I probably should have been terminated if you would have tried to cover it up. Yeah. But I'll never forget that, though. It's a lesson that kind of an integrity lesson, because it went through my mind for a moment, like, can I do something? Can I fix this? Can I come in at night? It went through my mind for a moment. Can I solder these wires back together? Just because I was scared. Yeah. But obviously I didn't do that. I owned it, but the way you went about telling me that, it's a lesson that I learned that I think everybody should realize, that owning your mistakes is way more important than trying to cover them up.
Yeah, that's what it came down to, is owning it, because most people get in trouble when they try to hide or make up things or lie or whatever. But no, you owned up to it, and you were quick to step up to whatever it was going to take to deal with it. And what more can you ask?
Right. And I'm still there 16 years later.
Yep.
So
no, that was it was an easy decision for me. It just seemed like all seemed right. So
and I'm sure that's not the first time you've seen that. I'm sure.
It's true.
I'm sure it's happened over many years of owning shops. I'm sure that was a minuscule mistake in the whole scheme of things.
Yeah, many of my mistakes cost far more than that.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, running a business,
Sure.
good sized business, it's
Yeah.
it's gonna happen. But
Yeah.
so let's go back. So was it mid '80s, 1985, whenever you started Schaefer Autobody?
Yeah. 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 It was Labor Day weekend, 1985.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was you were a mechanic before that, correct?
What I did is I went to when I was in high school. I'd always liked working with my hands on cars and such. My senior year of high school, I said, okay, I'm going to take this auto mechanics class for a semester or whatever, just see how much I really like it, and get into it a little more and taste of it that way. And I liked it, so I went to the 2-year technical school program at SIU Carbondale, and very good technical program. Got done with that and was hired by a company called Feld Truck Leasing,
Okay.
and was given a lot of latitude in my job. My job was training other technicians on how to deal with anti-lock brakes and electrical systems and stuff.
And that was
like
around the time period when that was becoming
Yes, it was
mainstream
just,
at that time, probably.
that's right. So and these were all on trucks, large trucks, over-the-road type trucks, and had a lot of opportunity there to do a lot of things. Made a few mistakes, but just it was good. After 4 years there, I went to work for a car dealership for 5 years. Again, I was fortunate to work for somebody who gave me a lot of latitude to do what I thought was right, and that was good. But as it went on, I kind of got the desire to get into something on my own. So it's, I moved fairly quick from the hands-on into other duties because I was a service manager at that car dealership, but always tended to have a hand, maybe more of a hand than I should have at times in the technical hands-on pieces of it.
Okay. So you had some entrepreneur kind of inside of you always, in a way. You always wanted to.
Yeah,
to
in
find
fact,
that
that's
thing.
pretty prevalent in my entire family. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I know that there's I think a family member had a water company, I believe.
yeah, water
So-
treatment company and an engineering company, stuff like that. Yeah.
I wonder if that's genetic.
Good question. I'm sure it's either genetic or it gets drilled into you when you're so little.
As you're growing up.
But I saw a picture the other day when I was probably not much older than your daughter upstairs, and I'm watching my dad solder some wires together.
Oh, wow.
So there was probably some interest then too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you wanted to get into your own thing. Now, did you? I know some of this history, but I
right.
don't know how well I
Yeah.
have it. Did you have a mechanical shop first?
The business that we took over was a body shop and mechanical shop.
Okay.
It was a small operation, but still, it was having some difficulty, and we purchased the business, but we did about 1/3 of the business was mechanical, 2/3 was body work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't have a lot of experience in the auto body
On the
part
body
at
end.
that time.
You know, when I worked for the car dealership for about the last year or so, I took on responsibility for the body shop. So I learned about the body shop business in that process.
Gotcha.
Mechanics are fine with getting a little greasy, but they hate body shop dust.
Yeah.
And body men typically don't mind a little bit of dust, but they hate getting their hands greasy.
Oh, yeah.
So
I get it.
I was, so I had exposure to it and such. The dust was something that just by my nature I liked. I'd rather work on something mechanical and greasy than dusty, but that was
Gotcha.
just the way it was.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
but
then-
I did enjoy the management aspect of the body shop.
Okay.
Okay.
So then you purchased your first store.
That's right.
That was a mix of both, and then over time you decided to veer towards the collision side rather than the mechanical side.
Yeah, it was easier to, for me, it was easier to scale the business upward on the bodywork side or on the collision repair side than it was on the mechanical side. And I think some of that has to do with specialization because collision repair work is, in fact, really is a specialty of automotive service. You know, but you're focusing on collision repair.
Sure.
And a similar focus could be that you're going to do just alignments and brakes, or it could be that you're only going to work on Chevrolets or whatever. But some focus, I think, helps, and collision repair is a focus area.
Okay, that makes sense.
Service, yeah.
So then, so you eventually, how long did you run that with both a mix before you set your mind on just going strictly collision?
Yeah, we did that for 11 years. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and by then we had the mechanical business in a separate facility, and you know, different geographically. And I had been itching to maybe just focus on the body shop side, and we were in the process of getting our second body shop location up and going in Ellisville. And one day a guy calls me and said he was interested in the mechanical business, and we got together, and by midnight that day we had our deal ironed out.
Oh wow!
So
the right opportunity at the right time, just
right timing, everything. It just fit because it kind of removed that burden from me and allowed me to focus on the body shop right when I needed to, because we were opening that second body shop
store.
Yeah,
gotcha. And then that gave you an opportunity to just focus on that. Then
yeah,
wasn't long later you opened your third store, and then
2 years later was our Fenton location, and then. Actually, we did a few locations within the next several years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So that sped things up a lot. Just
yeah.
offloading the mechanical side of things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't all perfect, you know, made some, you know, screwed a few things up along the way of doing that, but it all worked out.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the nature of business, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I know the location I'm at was your Crestwood location, which opened up in 2008, I believe, because I started there shortly after it opened in 2008, towards the end of 2008.
Yeah.
So, and then I believe your Creve Coeur store came after that, and so at a certain point, you decided to step away and pass duties down to Scott, your son. And I don't know I don't know the circumstances, but I assume that you decided to move away partially because you wanted to somewhat see how the company would operate without you being in it every single day. Would that be correct? Or?
Kind of, but I think it was a combination of a couple things. One was that we had been taking some vacations in the Pacific Northwest, and I was really getting to like it.
Okay.
And Scott was getting more and more involved in the business, and I kind of felt like, okay, looking at the people in the business and looking at his situation and such, it becomes challenging when there's two Schaefers around. Okay, so which one do you go and talk to for whatever? Okay, and
between you and Scott, your son.
Scott and I, yeah. And so it kind of made sense that I felt like the business was in a place, and he was in a place, and I was in a place to where it was the right time to go ahead and pursue something I was interested in, still stay involved in the business, but not so much on site, more remote. And that gives him and his team the opportunity to, to excel and grow and make their own mistakes, but get where they want to go.
Right. So you're kind of overlooking from a distance, basically.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of situations where the old guy hangs on too long, and it just nobody ever gets anywhere.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I get that. And honestly, you were always still very connected, even all those years you lived in Washington, and it was
hard not to be. But
you were always right. You knew what was going on for the most part. From what I gathered.
Oh yeah,
you were very, very connected.
Yeah.
I know you reviewed all of the company's CSIs, and I'm sure I don't doubt you do that anymore. But at this point,
I don't see them now because mostly probably do the different method of collecting that information.
Right.
Nowadays, some of that's more automated than it used to be. But always enjoyed being in touch. You can always tell how a business is doing by what the customers are saying.
Yeah. So that was 2011 when you moved away, I'm guessing?
Yep, February of 2011.
Okay. That reminds me of a story that was, it was New Year's Day 2011, I believe.
Okay.
When a tornado came through and hit the Crestwood area.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
about a mile from my shop, and it flattened
Yep.
some houses and everything.
Yep, I do remember.
And I remember it surprised me that New Year's morning, the tornado hit New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day morning, we were obviously closed, but that morning I was curious because I knew it hit near the shop, so I was going up there to check on things. I was just curious to see if it got hit or what happened.
Yeah.
And I remember getting up there, I pull in, and there was somebody all bundled up in the very back of the parking lot cutting up some trees that had fallen that the tornado cut down. I was like, I'm going to go say hi to this person back here, and I guess they already got someone cleaning up, and it turned out it was you. You were there cutting up the trees. I guess you just wanted something to do that day.
When something strikes that close, you got to go check it out. And when you get there, if there's things to do, you just end up doing them.
You just figured, it's part of owning your business, I guess.
That's true.
But it surprised me. I didn't expect to walk up and see that it was you that was there cutting up those trees back there. But
well, it was great that you came by too.
Yeah, that shows your work ethic. I mean,
there you go. That's right.
You're near moving away, and
sure.
I don't know if you call it semi-retired or what, but you were still there working,
doing
hard work too. Hard labor work.
Yeah.
But I that's something I'll never forget either. So that surprised me.
Yeah.
So you sold the company to Scott. Mm-hmm. That was what, 2018, 2019, sometime around then.
2000. Let's see, 5. Gosh, probably 19.
19. Okay, it was sometime around then.
Yeah.
So you sell the company to your son, Scott Schaefer, and you're still connected,
sure,
in a way, but you passed the torch,
Sure.
But and then last year, about 5 years after that, 4 or 5 years after that, Scott sells the company. Mm-hmm. So in a way, you kind of sold your company twice. In a way, which time was more painful? Selling the company to your son, where you're still it's your son, so you're still kind of connected. But then your son selling it where you're completely disconnected at that point.
Yeah, that's a really good question. There was no pain in selling it to Scott. That was logical, made sense, made me happy, the whole bit.
Sure.
When he sold it, he and I talk regular enough to where I understood. I knew where he was thinking, and it's not a bad plan. I think he picked the right people to sell to. All of that. All of that's been fine, and you always know they're going to do some things a little different and such. Mm-hmm. But it is more of an emotional thing when all of a sudden it's not. That next level of being away from it is a change.
Right.
Yeah, and
that's what I expected you would say.
Yeah, and even in both cases, actually, you back, so you have to back off another level, but it's just the backing off entirely. Backing off is a challenge, just because you've always been in it, and now it's one more degree of separation. And you struggle with, well, how should I feel about this, or what should I feel like, or what should I do, or what's too far away and what's too close, or whatever. You just don't know where it's at. And then it's also the kind of what's my new purpose in life. What should I be doing?
Sure.
Because it does mess with your mind.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure I could have. I mean, it's something you've been doing for so many years.
Oh yeah.
Half your life basically, probably.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, it's just gone.
Yeah.
It's like a child. It's like a child. You're growing a child in a way.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But
absolutely.
It's your baby.
Yeah.
And I could. But that's what I expected. That's kind of what I expected. I'm sure passing down to your son is completely different than.
Yeah, it is.
Seeing it going completely away.
Yeah.
But
it is. Yeah. It's still fun to go back and see everybody, and I enjoy doing that. I enjoy going back and see folks. And
do you stay in touch with QCG at all, or
a little bit?
Ask you questions or.
Yeah, the challenge there is that it's challenging for it's kind of like when you well, I don't know what it's kind of like. It just but I do stay in touch. Yeah. I do stay in touch. I do care about the business and the people in it and everybody. And you want to see you want to see things go well.
Sure.
You do
Absolutely.
want to see things do well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially your name's still on the building.
I was just going to say your name's still in the community that way, and
Right.
you want to see it represented well. So you like staying in touch, but at the same time, it's not fair to them to be in their soup every day either. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
And there's only so much you can do.
That's right. Yeah.
You don't have that authority.
That's right.
anymore. So
Yeah.
technically, you can't fire me now.
That's true. I could talk bad about you, but I can't fire you.
Yeah, I could see all that being
Yeah.
very different lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, what are you up to now?
I do some fun stuff. I've always enjoyed boats or boating, whether it's a power boat or a canoe or a raft or a kayak or whatever. It's always been a part of my life and a passion. I got involved in some nonprofit type work where I live, and that stuff can keep you amazingly busy, and it can be very dry. It can be a driver also, which on the one hand is good because it keeps some strong purpose in your life and what you're doing. However, it's a little different ball game because in those environments, you're not, you don't have the, I guess, authority to necessarily know what's right and then do what's absolutely has to be,
Right.
to do, or at least to do it promptly. You can get there. It just takes a while.
Going through lots
Yeah.
of different steps and
Yeah, there's just more steps and more, and you've got, you're among a board of equals, and you have to respect that. And not that you shouldn't anyway, but it, when you've been the guy for a good while, and you make a decision, you go with it. The decision-making process is a little more careful
Gotcha.
in those environments.
That brings me to another subject
Yeah.
that I was thinking about recently. I was listening to an interview with our probably soon-to-be future president, Donald Trump.
All right.
And he was talking about how regulation, I'll openly say I'm a Trump supporter.
That's okay.
Not ashamed of it.
Yeah.
But he was talking about how regulations can be just as much of a burden on a business as taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that? As far as too many regulations, if you're trying to start a business or open a shop, how much does regulations make that difficult?
Regulations are like rules. If the rules are clear and well thought out, then, and everybody's playing by the same game, then that's the game. That's what you do. The challenging part is when the regulations are enforced by people with maybe differing or a variety of, call it political views, personalities, whatever you want, that use those regulations in a way to drive their personal agenda. And that's when regulations are very frustrating and hold you back.
Right. Chokes out opening another location or whatever it might be.
Yeah. When they're clear cut and interpreted properly, and everybody has to follow them, no big deal.
Right.
It's just, like I say, it's part of one of the pieces of the puzzle.
Right. Because you have a set plan to
You have
follow.
a set plan and you're all competing on equal ground.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's the oddball stuff that gets thrown in or
Yeah.
they're trying to do something to meet their own agenda in a way.
Yeah. And so I'll date myself a little bit and say some of those comments are very similar to the Reagan views in the 80s, in which
Less regulations.
which he did a good job of dealing with a lot of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Which absolutely regulations are important.
Sure.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't have regulations, but I feel like they've just added regulations and they've never taken any away. Yeah. And a lot of them are probably not even relevant anymore. And,
very true. Very true.
I was curious to see somebody who built a business.
Sure.
What your take on that was?
Yeah, I mean it's challenging because it's another cost and all that kind of stuff. But then again, it's just part of the game.
Sure.
Again, as long as they're handled properly.
Right.
Okay. Dealing with the improper handling is the other piece of the puzzle. That's part of it too, that you just accept the fact that they're not always going to get managed properly. So that's another piece you need to deal with.
You gotta plan on fighting, basically.
Yeah.
Not fighting or figuring it out.
Figure it out. Yeah. And in most cases, you can figure it out. In most cases, if you listen careful enough, you can get where you need to go. But it can be challenging.
How much harder do you think it got over the years since your first location? As years progressed, how much more difficult did it get to open a shop than it was in the beginning?
So that would span 30, that's a span of like 38, 39 years. And I don't know. I don't know that it's any more difficult now from a regulations perspective, because in some respects, some of it's made out, it's maybe a little clearer.
Okay.
When there's change going on, when there's change related to environmental policies and stuff like that, in the early stages, people don't quite know what they're doing when they set them up. So in those early years, we were dealing with a fair amount of that it was hard to find the answer. Okay. It's probably a little easier to find the answer now. I guess the challenge is you almost hesitate to ask too many questions now, because you uncover lots of more complexity. It's kind of like you go, it makes sense, and you do with what's obvious, but it's almost like the saying of asking. Sometimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission, because that person giving you permission, they're under stress now to make sure that they give you the right answer, which means they're going to go lean toward the safe side. And all of a sudden you've been given a whole pile of stuff that you've got to, now that you have knowledge of, you need to comply with,
Right.
Whereas before, if you went at it with the right attitude, you got pretty darn close. And if there were a few little hiccups, you dealt with them and it was okay.
Gotcha.
It's challenging because everybody's so afraid of being wrong and getting in trouble for it that it's hard to get straight answers in a lot of cases. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So in a
From
way,
from a financial perspective, I can tell you that opening a shop is a far more expensive deal than it was,
today.
20, 30 years ago.
Oh,
or
I'm
more.
sure.
Yeah.
All the equipment and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
Due to regulations, which a lot of those are justified.
Yeah.
Paint booths are justified. I mean.
Yeah. It was in the, I'm going to say around the year 2000, so around the time Crestwood location came online and such, it was it was typically somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 to get equipped with paint booth and equipment and stuff like that you needed for a shop, or at least the way we wanted to set them up. Whereas nowadays it's well over $1 million to do
just to get going.
Yeah, from an equipment perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have people message me all the time. You should start your own shop. You should start your own shop. I don't want that. I don't want that burden on me right now.
Yeah.
The amount of costs and everything else. I'm good. I'm happy.
Oh, I was talking to someone the other day in the equipment business, and when they set up this is not even with a body shop, just a mechanical dealership shop, that it's $1 million deal just to equip that mechanical shop at a dealership.
Right.
And that doesn't even touch on the body shop.
Oh, wow. Yeah. and that's it's not as big of a deal if you already have a chain of other businesses going, but if for somebody who's starting from scratch,
that's tough.
It's tough.
It's real tough.
And no banks are just going to loan you $1 million if you don't have some sort of credibility or something connected.
Well, I mean, I was looking for $100,000 when I opened my first shop, and bank didn't want to touch that.
Yeah.
Because you're a new guy.
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 of them fail. So
yeah.
I don't make enough money on that loan to take the risk.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. 9 out of 10 small businesses fail, and probably, in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the main reasons that happens is from people overspending and just getting too deep, and not thinking that, if I buy this $100,000 piece of equipment, I'm gonna make it'll pay for itself, which it doesn't always work like that.
Right.
But at the same time, the other reason I think a lot of small businesses fail is the lack of the leader being able to delegate.
Oh, very true.
Delegate tasks,
Yeah.
and thinking they should do everything themselves, which I think most people have a problem with delegating.
I always had a major problem with it. Me personally.
Sure.
I always had a problem with delegating as I should. And
how did you overcome that?
Oh gosh, when you're not good at it, you bounce back and forth. You do a little too much delegating, and then you get burnt, and then you bounce the other way. You just kind of bounce back and forth is what happened.
And just learn.
Yeah, and probably that part probably didn't get better until Scott took over. And because he was better at doing that than I was.
So that was probably even a hard step, just stepping aside the delegation part of that and disconnecting yourself in a way.
Yeah. So, very challenging for me.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, I think most people, it's a very difficult thing to.
It is. Yeah, it can be.
To give out those tasks and expect these people to do it close to as good as you would do it, And there has to be a fine medium, because you can't expect somebody to do everything the exact same way you're going to do it, because that's not possible.
Yeah, and the real shame is when you're not good at doing it. When you are good at doing it, your people end up doing an even better job than what you would have done in most cases.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they there were aspects in the shop, Kyle, that you had a better perspective on than I did every day,
Sure.
and things that you do and such. If I'd have gotten into everything that you were dealing with and micromanaging what you were doing, you wouldn't have done near as well.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
And the shop wouldn't have done as well. The business would not have done as well. So, I mean, you have to, I truly believe if you can delegate well, you're individually or as a group, they're going to do a better job than you probably can do.
Sure. Yeah. So if somebody wants to start a small business today and grow it, if they're smart with their finances and they're a leader that can delegate, they're probably going to be successful.
I think they have a good shot. There's a book that's been out forever called The E-Myth.
Okay.
E-Myth, and it's really all about that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to read that.
And it's been out it's at least 30 or 40 years old. Might be an older book than that.
Yeah, I'm going to download that. I do a lot of audiobooks.
Okay,
I
cool.
listen to a lot of audiobooks. I'm going to have E-Myth, you said.
Been around, book's been around forever. But.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
The other interesting thing about the delegating thing or whatever is that if the day comes and that you're interested in selling your business, it's much more valuable if you've got a team of people that are doing it rather than you. Yeah.
And that was something I kind of wondered if that was another part of the reason that you stepped aside and disconnected yourself in 2011 for that reason.
I wasn't thinking about selling, but at the same time, when you look at your business or your enterprise value, it's worth a whole lot more if it's not dependent upon you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you could get hit by a car or whatever.
That's right.
And then you don't want you want the business to be able to survive.
That's right. To survive
if you're
and prosper.
Completely disconnected.
That's right.
Sure. Especially if you're selling the business.
Yeah.
So.
Because that buyer, he wants, he probably doesn't want to get in and run it every day.
Right. Sure. So, yeah. Especially a good sized business.
That's right.
They're buying it as an investment. And
that's right.
Just like QCG has done.
Exactly.
So, do you think you would have sold sooner if Scott wasn't in the picture?
Probably not.
No.
I don't think so.
You think you'd still be running it today?
No, I probably would have done something
at some point.
I tend to think the timing was probably similar.
Okay.
Hard to say for sure, but I don't think the timing was long ways off.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
QCG, you might know this already. I heard yesterday, I think it was, that they just acquired another chain of shops, actually bigger than Schaefer. I don't know if it's public yet, but by the time this comes out, it'll be public, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I heard that up north, I think they said. Chain of shops.
Minneapolis area.
Okay.
And and they're another very good business. And from what I know, they've done a good job of that whole leadership, transition piece, not having to micromanage everything there. It's a good business. It's a very good business with a good reputation.
Cool. Yeah.
And like us, they do they do more retail mechanical also, but they also have a calibration center, and they very much involved in the industry and doing the right thing.
Gotcha.
Yep.
I remember years ago, I'm going to guess 5 or 6 years ago, you talked about how you believe that the OEM certifications are going to become the dominant role in shops over like iCar or something like that. And you were exactly right, it seems like, the way it appears. What's your thought on shops getting away from... What's your thought on shops getting away from DRPs? It's becoming more of a trend, it seems like.
Yeah. It comes down to taking care of the customer. It always comes down to taking care of the customer. Okay. So if being an OE certified shop does a better job of taking care of the customer, then it's a good thing, and it's going to be good for the long term. The customer that we deal with every day is, to a degree, and some of this verbiage may not be correct, but they really are represented by their insurance company in a way, and because they don't necessarily have the knowledge, and the customer does not believe in overpaying, whether they're writing the check or an insurance company's writing the check. They still don't believe in overpaying for something. They think it should be earned, like everything else we do.
Sure.
Okay. They don't feel like we should have a free ride on anything and just get everything we want either.
Sure.
So
there's a negotiation.
It's a negotiation, and a DRP is a negotiation. You can you get involved with one. It's a negotiation. Along the line, if the negotiation gets too far out of whack, you get out of it. There's no doubt that in some areas there's always personalities involved in these DRP programs, and you can get on the wrong side of that, and that maybe it's your fault, maybe it's not your fault. But I have, early in my years, a lot of the seminars you'd go to back in those days were very anti-insurance and very militantly anti-insurance.
So that's not a new thing.
Not a new thing. Not a new thing. I was involved early, this is late 80s. I was involved in going to the state capitol and lobbying against the push of aftermarket parts. Okay.
Okay.
And we actually were successful in Missouri, and I'm sure indirectly there were some negative consequences that got thrown on our business as a result of being involved in that. But anyway, and that's okay. You learn through those things.
Sure.
But during those years, there were a lot of people in the industry who would preach, you got to demand this, you got to demand that, and all this kind of stuff. But then you end up finding out that they're not even following their own advice, and that really burns on you. And I guess I don't know that I was ever really good at it, but I did believe in, understanding that the insurance company is an extension of the customer. Sure. They want that customer happy also. They really don't want a problem down the road. They don't always know, we can't expect them to know our business, especially from a technical perspective, like they do theirs. So it's always going to take some wrestling, but if there isn't some wrestling or negotiation going on, then things swing too far one way, and then it blows up.
Sure.
And that's not good either.
Right.
So
if the insurance company let the shops just dictate everything and they just gave them an open checkbook, that would get taken advantage of. Kind of like what's happened with student loans in a way, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Same thing.
Yeah. It's kind of like if I like to say, if the business is easy, everybody'd get into it, And then if everybody's into it, there is no opportunity anymore. So you just lost it, you know?
Yeah.
So it has to be tough. Business is always tough.
Sure.
And I've seen this in multiple industries where people complain about influence from whatever area it is. But you know what? It's just the way it is, especially in a third party situation where you got one party kind of the customer and the other person paying the bill, and then a third person doing the work and getting paid for it. It's there's always, you know, everybody's always thinking the other guy is, you know, pushing them too hard or taking advantage or whatever.
Sure.
You know, and they're going to leverage that customer to try and wrestle with it.
Sure.
Which sometimes, yes, you probably have to, no doubt, but because it is their car, and if things get pushed too far, you can't do something that's going to be unsafe or cause a problem. You can't do that stuff.
Sure.
You got to take care of the customer from that perspective, but you also got to respect that. You know, I'll diverge from that and talk about the mechanical business for a little bit.
Sure.
Because in the mechanical repair business, generally that bill is getting paid out of that customer's wallet. And it's painful in a lot of cases for that customer. And if something goes wrong, and it may not be your fault, that something went wrong, something else failed the day after you did your repair.
And it happens.
It happens. And that day after, all of a sudden, you are not in the best light of that customer anymore. You know, you may have been taking care of them for 10 years, and all of a sudden, you're a deadbeat, okay? The difference in our industry, in our collision repair industry, where insurance is involved, is that the insurance folks in general do understand when those things happen, okay? And they have the checkbook that's able to pay for it when those kind of things happen.
Sure.
And as a result, you know, we're asked to do the job for a right and careful price, okay, or a negotiated or even a toughly negotiated price. But when something else goes wrong with the car, coincidentally or whatever, they are there to step up, and they understand a lot of that happens.
Right.
So in some respects, it makes our job easier,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah. That makes sense.
So there are definitely both sides to all of that. And,
Right.
and it gets abused. There's no doubt it gets abused on both sides.
Oh yeah.
But, that's life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't always fair.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So I'm not saying all this because I'm taking sides on it, or an insurance side or an anti-insurance side or anything.
Sure.
I'm just saying that it's the business we're in, and if we're successful, it's because we find a way to work with those parties to make ourselves successful.
right, and find that right negotiation that works for everybody.
That's right. It is what it is. If you don't like it, get out of the business.
Yeah. And you're dealing with customers that in reality, it's like going to a doctor's office. You don't really want to be there.
Right.
We don't have any customers that really, if they're at our shop, that means they got in an accident or
That's
something
right.
happened.
Something bad's happened.
So nobody really wants to be there.
No.
They're happy to get their car fixed, but
That's right.
it's not something they necessarily
Yeah.
enjoy,
Yeah.
you know, but it's just
Yeah.
something you have to deal with. And we have to figure out how to keep those customers happy
Yeah.
in a bad situation.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
so,
Yeah.
but on that same topic, it's almost like Tesla, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime somebody gets in an accident, they have to go to a certified shop, or the shop can't even order parts for the car.
Right. Right.
So if more OEMs go that direction, which I feel like they're going to over time, particularly with anything structural, anything major,
Yeah.
I think all of them over time are going to go towards that path to where you have to go to a certified shop, or they won't be able to get parts.
Yeah.
Which in a way that kind of defeats the DRP system in a way.
Yeah.
Could potentially.
Yeah. I think that, even in industry meetings and such I was at, 2 years ago, there was active conversation about that. And I think it's an evolution, it's an evolution. I think there's no doubt in my mind that the OE certification will continue to be important and get more important. No doubt about it. No doubt in my mind that insurance companies are going to continually look for ways to make sure their customers get taken care of in a predictable way that they can know what to expect in terms of cost and other stuff.
Sure.
Because they want to be able to know what they're dealing with, because they need to know how to adjust their rates accordingly, et cetera.
Sure.
They've got to deal with all that too.
Sure.
So it's an evolution. What it looks like in the end, I think it's they will actually. Well, in fact, we've already seen it. A good number, I would say a majority of the DRPs have gotten to where they want OE certified shops in their network.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, they do, because they know that's critical.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know the cars are getting fixed.
Yeah.
Per those OE specs.
Exactly. So they want those shops in their network. Doesn't mean they want to give the store away in the process, but sure. they want those shops in the network.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's always going to be that, like you said, there's always going to be that negotiation between the two.
There is.
And that's with any business.
Absolutely it is.
Everybody's going to want the cheapest price they could get, but they also want the best result possible too. So
yeah, they want a combination.
Sure.
They want good service, they want good quality, and they want a fair price.
Sure.
A fair price. If it's too cheap, you get suspicious.
Sure.
So.
Sure. So on another topic,
yeah,
I was curious to you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute.
Okay.
So years ago, this was probably 2009-ish, I'm guessing as well.
Okay.
There was I'm not gonna say any names, but there was a painter at my location that and that was when Scott was managing the location, and he came up to me one day and he said, "Man, Scott keeps picking on me. Scott he brings every car back with dirt nibs." And he wants me to buff everything, and he was all worked up, and he came and talked to me, and I'm 22 years old this time, and I've always been pretty outspoken.
Yeah.
And he asked me my opinion, and I don't know who was in the right, whether it was Scott or him. I wasn't that connected to that at that time at my age, but I told him I specifically said, well, if you don't think Scott's being fair, you should talk to Steve and get his opinion. Steve's a pretty reasonable person, and a few days later. He lived about a couple miles away from me, and he comes knocking on my door one Friday night. He goes, "Kyle, I did what you told me to, and I got fired." True story. And I felt horrible at the moment because it's literally what I told him to do.
Yeah.
And needless to say that he was probably I would imagine he was probably out on his way out the door anyway.
Yeah.
More than likely, that was just probably the final straw. I don't know if you remember that or not, but the reason I bring this up is I've always been pretty outspoken, and I'll come and talk to you about something if I want to.
Yeah.
But I've never got fired. I never got in trouble, and I think my approach was a big part of that. The way I approached it. But I have people that message me quite often. Well, I get messages from people every day, but people from all over the country, all over the world that will message me, and they'll say, "Hey, my managers want me to do this, and I don't agree with it. What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do?" And I always tell them, if you don't agree with management, you should probably just look for another job, rather, because you're not going to change them. But my question is, what's the right way to approach management or leadership with something that might be that somebody doesn't agree with, but they want to approach and talk to you about it? And not get fired.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it's an interesting question, and I may remember the individual involved. I don't remember that person coming to me.
Sure.
But it may have happened. Don't know.
Right.
And it's also hard to say what the response was, or what I just don't remember the circumstances.
Sure.
But I think that honesty is probably the big part of that, meaning if somebody comes to me and they're complaining because of of what somebody else tells them, or they just need to be, I need to believe that they believe in what they're saying.
Okay.
And that it's not not that they're repeating some phrase or whatever that they've picked up somewhere, or thinking they're better than everybody, and they're, you know, you get a lot of people, not a lot of people, you get people who tend to think they're right and they're righteous about this or that or whatever, you know, and I guess the word for that is self-righteous on some things.
Sure.
And I just don't, you know, that is not productive.
Sure.
You know, so if you have an issue with something, don't behave in a self-righteous way about it, but just be honest about why this is a problem, or what, you know, how this is causing me a problem, how it keeps me from being able to do what I can do. You know, I guess I just go back to that honesty piece, you know.
Sure. And it's the approach, the way they approach the situation, I'm sure too.
Yeah.
If they come off irate and kind of just ignorant about it.
Yeah.
And
yeah, because over the years there's been plenty of people that have been irate over something, and I think in a lot of cases I've been able to kind of listen through that and get to the real cause. And the real cause is a lot of times something very legitimate. So maybe their irateness is what got my attention. So in that case, maybe it was right for them to do that.
Sure.
You know, every person I deal with is different, but I think it comes back to being honest on the stuff.
Sure.
And I will share with you one of the things that always was an issue from a management side for me is that I always wanted our managers to be, if they had an employee who was not doing the job right, you know, there's kind of I call it a three-step rule. Number one, do they know what's expected? Number two, do they know how to do what's expected? And if they know what to do and how to do it and they're not doing it, then they're making a choice that's not in my best interest, okay? So I should confront and talk to them about that and give them the opportunity to fix that, okay? And if they don't fix it, then I need to part ways with them. But when I part ways with them, I need to be honest with them, okay? I need to not just sit there silently while I don't like this guy and then someday say, you know what, I just think I'm going to cut back a little bit here or whatever. No. If the guy is not doing a good job for whatever reason, doesn't have the capability, doesn't have whatever, I need to tell him exactly why he isn't going to have a job here anymore, okay? I need to tell him exactly why, because otherwise you get people who go through their lives assuming that they've always done a good job and life itself is against them, you know?
Right.
And they don't understand or know why they lost that last job.
Yep.
People need to know that way they can do differently the next time.
Sure.
You know, so I think expecting honesty from whoever you're working for is important too. So if that person has a complaint, he should voice it, but also expect that he gets an honest answer. And if the honest answer is that this guy just doesn't like you, well, okay.
Sure.
At least I know.
Yeah. So in a way, you're saying that if a manager of a shop needs to fire somebody, that person shouldn't be surprised. They should already know. The manager should have already had a talk with them at least once before that minimum,
at least once. And
so they are aware of the issue rather than it's just a complete
that
shock.
Definitely should be that way. And even if it's not, when he finally even if out of the blue today he decides, I can't have that guy here anymore, he at least needs to tell him why.
Right.
You know, and be honest with it.
Right.
In fact, that's what, from a legal perspective, and I'm not an attorney, so don't take legal advice from me, but even from a legal perspective, there's an attorney who helped me along the way a few times, and he always said, you can do what you need to do for whatever reason is right in your mind. Just be honest about it, because it's when you're dishonest about why you terminated a particular employee, when you're dishonest about it, either to him or to somebody else or whatever, that's when people get in big trouble. Legally.
Did you ever have any employees come after you after the fact? Just irate, ignorant people, or?
I've had some challenging people, but not really anybody that came after me afterwards.
No.
no. I had some challenging situations where I had to let someone go, where other people in the building were afraid for me, but
Oh, wow.
it wasn't.
One of those situations.
It was, it is what it is. You got to be straight up and tell them, and make sure you can get to the door if you have to.
Right. Yeah. Just know the situation, know the person, and obviously, whenever you work with somebody every day, you kind of get to know that person.
That's right.
You know what kind of reaction you're going to get more than likely.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Earlier, I don't mean to preach on the insurance relations thing too much, but just to assure folks that I got it wrong more often than I got it right. Okay. It's not easy.
And I'm not bashing insurance companies by any means.
No, I know. I realize
curious.
that. But what I don't want to do is, I know what it was I was going to say. I fully recognize it is not easy to do the things that I'm somewhat preaching about with regards to that.
Sure.
It is not easy. It goes against the grain. It feels bad. It all that kind of stuff. So it's very challenging. Yeah. It's very challenging. It's very challenging for me. Get some coaching or whatever to help you with it or whatever. I just want nobody to feel like it's a piece of cake. If it's hard for you, that's normal.
Right.
That's the normal.
Yeah. If it was easy, everybody, like you said, everybody would do it.
Everybody did.
It wouldn't be a big deal. Now, how much did you see in today's world? It's very difficult to find technicians. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's part of the whole reason I'm doing all this is because I'm trying to attract.
Yeah, I compliment you on it. That's great.
You. I appreciate that. But I want to attract youth to the industry because we already have a problem, but it's just going to get worse if we don't get more people into it.
Yep.
How much has that changed over the years? Did you have any struggle in the 90s to find employees compared to today?
Good question. I think it's more challenging today. I think finding really good ones, really good technicians has always been a challenge. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's the deal. It's always been challenging, but it just keeps getting more so.
More and more,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like just from all the different people that I talk to, message me, comments, and everything else, I feel like shops almost have to be very gentle with their employees nowadays because they're scared they're going to lose people. They almost don't want to correct a person because they don't want to scare that person away because it's so difficult to find another person to fall in that spot. Whereas I assume in the 90s it probably wasn't as difficult.
I think it was just as challenging. I also think that believing that you have to be gentle, I think you have to be respectful.
Sure.
But
honest.
But honest. And people really get in trouble when they accept subpar performance because that typically just keeps getting worse. Mm-hmm. And when as you know, when I'm in town here, I like to shake hands with everybody I can run into in the shops. And I think that keeping a high bar attracts the right people. It means you lose a few people occasionally, mm-hmm. but that process also tends to attract the right people because
Agreed.
You don't want to work in a shop with somebody who doesn't do good work, gives a place a bad reputation, or whatever. It's kind of like, this isn't right. So I just think you have to keep the bar high and know that it's going to be tough. That's just the way it is.
Right. But if you're interviewing a high level technician and you walk them through the shop and they see mediocre work, they probably aren't going to want to work there.
They aren't going to want to work there.
And the same thing goes for cleanliness of the shop.
Yep.
And the appearance of the shop.
I would agree with you there.
That's what's going to attract your best technicians.
The cleanliness thing is especially difficult. It's amazing. Why should it be that difficult? But it just is. And and you hate, as a manager, you hate to, get after people over that kind of stuff constantly, But there were a lot of technicians I interviewed over the years who one of their main drivers was the place I'm at's a pig pen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's difficult being on top of the cleanliness thing every day, but it's important to many more people than you think.
Yeah. And that's how you're going to keep your best technicians is
that's
keeping
right.
high expectations and cleanliness, and that's how these shops are going to maintain their people.
An easy thing to say, but it's not always easy to do every day.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about, or?
Gosh. I think that I think there's tons of opportunity in this industry for people that want to get into it. I would encourage anybody that's in school, as much as you can, focus on math and science and physics and things like that, because it pays off to have knowledge and understanding in those areas. If you have a knack for those kind of things, that's absolutely wonderful, because that kind of leads to common sense with your hands.
Sure.
And, we do a lot with our hands in this industry, but our brains got to drive them.
Yeah.
And so I think that if you genuinely like it, that there's no reason to, if you genuinely like working with or around cars, I think the industry has tons of opportunity for anybody that wants to get in.
Sure.
Because even if there was a flood of people coming in, you still have the opportunity to shine above the rest of them.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Make yourself stand out.
Yeah.
That actually triggered another idea in my head. As far as apprentices go, that's a whole different challenge for shops, because you're trying to train somebody and teach them, but you're also teaching on a customer's car that also has to be repaired correctly in a timely manner.
Yeah.
And do you have any advice on how a shop can maneuver training young people while also not affecting production?
That's tough, because there's no doubt that the production or turnaround time is going to suffer.
Sure.
It just will.
Particularly if you're trying to really advance that person,
right,
and not just keep them in one area.
That's right. So there's no doubt it's going to suffer, which means I guess accepting that, and in terms of the customer side of that comes down to setting expectations, because honestly, if you're without your car for 10 days or without your car for 6 days or even 3 days, it's too long in my eyes as a customer to be without my car. And if you somehow feel under pressure to promise it in 3 days when it's really going to take 6 days, I'm not going to be any happier with your 3-day promise, and I'm going to be very upset when you don't meet it.
Right.
Whereas if you'd have just said 6 days or 9 days or 2 weeks ahead of time,
right,
then I'm probably going to feel pretty good when you're done a day sooner.
Yeah.
So I don't have, as a customer, any perception of how long it should take,
right,
other than any answer is too long. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if I set my expectation on that up front, that gives me a little flexibility to work with the tech that's going to take a little time. Now, in terms of the ownership or management of the shop, there's no doubt it's a financial burden on the ownership. It's one of those things that I think you just either commit to or you don't, and know that cost is there, because I don't care how you do it, you're always going to be more profitable in a shop full of A-level technicians than you are in a mix. Yeah. You just will. Yeah. That's just the way it is. Yep. Yep. Because they're going to turn jobs faster and quicker, and better, less issues. Yeah. It's always going to be better. But I think we all do, and you are, with what you're doing, are committing to people that may have interest and pursuing it. And so there's a commitment there that comes on from the shop to do that. I think that it's maybe we need to do a better job of helping the apprentice understand the commitment that's being placed in them, and that we're doing that on blind faith, because you know what, I might train you for a year, and then somebody down the street sees you and says, you know what, he's trained enough for me, and pulls you away, which is unfortunate.
And it's hard to get somebody to sign a contract to stay with you too. I would personally never sign a contract.
No, I don't. I think it's a mistake to even assume that you can do something along those lines. Right. It just doesn't work.
Right.
There are some angles on that, but financial angles on that. But the truth is, if the other shop wants them bad enough, they'll pay off those financial angles. Right. So it just it doesn't work.
Or when it's all said and done, is it worth pursuing?
That's right. Yeah. So I think that maybe some, if we can somehow educate our apprentices on the commitment that the shop is showing by doing this, that can be that may pay off to do that. That may be one of the more important things to do.
Right.
And then, of course, they need to see that in their everyday work that they're doing. They need to see people who burn up wiring harnesses getting a chance to put them in a car, put them back, without getting killed over it.
Yeah. I mean, that's real. They need to see that they're progressing. They need to feel like they're getting somewhere. Yeah. And finding the right people too. There's plenty of kids that are probably dipshits that just, but you don't know until
well, that's true. Yeah. And that kind of comes down to the, there was another saying that a friend of mine had, which was hire slowly, fire quickly, meaning that be careful who you bring on board, but as soon as you're reasonably certain that they are not a fit and they're not going to do it, then get it over with.
Right.
And move on.
30 days. I mean, you could get a good feel for somebody in 30 days.
That's right.
And it's
absolutely.
Yeah. But at the same time, in a way, would you think hire fast, fire fast might be a good method too? Just get them in there, because you can only read so much from from an interview process.
Yeah, I think the hire slowly thing is to try to, you need to understand them as best you can as a person, and where are their values, and it takes a little time and investigation to do that. Mm-hmm. It might there are personality profile tests that you can have that may help you know whether this person is all thumbs or if he's good with his hands. Mm-hmm. Because
are they just a salesman that's selling you that they could do it, or can they actually do it?
Yeah. So I think, and that's not the tell-all thing. You can't go totally off of that.
Right.
But you can use that as a tool in figuring out, is this guy a possibility?
Sure.
Because sometimes some people it's just not going to be their path, and why put them through that misery? Break it to them early, and so they can get into what they really do want to do.
Right. Don't let it drag on, because it's just hurting everybody.
That's right.
In a way.
Yeah. So the apprentice thing is a very difficult thing.
Yeah, I've seen us try lots of different approaches, and it's difficult every time. And I've seen plenty of successful people.
Oh yeah. Well, we try to come up with these perfect solutions that don't cost us a nickel and don't slow down the car and everything else. And the fact is that those solutions don't exist.
Yeah.
They just don't. You're better off going into it knowing the challenge and accepting that and doing everything you can to make this productive long term with that person.
Yeah, and schools can only teach so much.
That's right.
I've seen quite a few technicians that go through school, and they, in their head, they think that they're this A-level journeyman technician when they get out, and they have a rude awakening pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And some of them never realize it.
Right.
They still think it, but school is great. It's great to get that education, but the real world is the first couple of years you're going to learn a ton.
Yeah.
It's.
Oh yeah.
There's
no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I on my first job, I screwed up plenty of things. At the time, I thought I was right. Later, I realized that I wasn't so right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Totally understand.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, I got to say, I appreciate you coming and sitting down with me. one of my biggest weaknesses is asking people for a favor to come and do something like this. That's something I'm not good at. And,
I'm glad you asked.
I appreciate it. We talked about it about 6 months ago, and I honestly, I was like, I didn't really expect for you to follow up and want to do it. And then about a month ago, whenever you emailed me and said that you're going to be in town and you wanted to do it, it meant a lot to me. So I appreciate you coming and sitting down and having this talk and kind of learning about the little history of the company you built. And
it makes it feels good to me to see what you're doing with it. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
Very nice job on everything you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you for employing me for all these years and taking good care of me and many other people as well. And many people's families.
I've told you this before, and I've told them before that it's the right relationships there are good for everybody involved.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's the goal.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you again. Appreciate it, Steve.
My pleasure.